Nora, I'm sorry. I've decided to leave with Chloe. The wedding was set to begin in just 10 minutes. One single text message. It was the last communication from Ethan Parker, the groom. The elegant venue, which should have been a space of blessings, transformed into an inferno where one woman's life was shattered. The cell phone slipped from the hand of Nora Bennett, pristine in her immaculate white wedding gown. With the sickening sound of the screen cracking, her life crumbled too. Was this the end? Or perhaps a new beginning? The dramatic story of a woman intertwined with vengeance and success, betrayal and love, begins now. The morning at the luxury accessories section of Neiman Marcus in Midtown Manhattan was always a hive of activity. The bright store lights made the designer handbags gleam. Like every day, Nora Bennett had arrived before anyone else to perfectly organize the displays. Going for #1 in sales again today. Let's go, Nora whispered to her reflection in the mirror. Her hair pulled back in a neat bun, and her crisp uniform completed her professional look. She had been in this position for 5 years, consistently achieving the best sales figures. When it was time for the morning meeting, the store manager announced in front of the entire staff, "Sales top spot this month once again goes to Ms. Bennett." A round of applause for her. The clapping of her colleagues echoed through the store, but the envy of some was plain to see in their eyes. Nora lowered her head humbly. At 10:30 in the morning, a client with an appointment arrived. Chloe Beaumont, one of the department store's most important VIP customers. She had a reputation for being incredibly demanding. But with Nora, she was always especially pleasant. "Nora, you don't have this bag in another color, do you?" Chloe said, examining a newly arrived limited edition purse. "The beige is far too common." A regular employee would have simply replied, "I'm sorry, this style is only available in this color." But Nora was different. "Please hold on a moment. I will consult directly with the headquarters," she said. Immediately, Nora contacted the brand representative. After a 15-minute call, she managed to confirm that a special order could be placed. Chloe's face lit up. "I knew I could count on you, Nora. You have style. Everyone else would have just told me it's not available." At 8 in the evening, as Nora prepared to leave, she saw Ethan waiting for her by the entrance. In his black suit, he looked as handsome as ever. At that precise instant, Chloe, who was riding down the escalator, spotted them. "Oh, Nora, leaving already?" Chloe's curious gaze settled on Ethan. Nora naturally stepped between the two. Let me introduce you to my fiancé. We're getting married next month." Chloe addressed Ethan directly. "Really? How wonderful. You are very sharp. What do you do?" "I work in the planning department at Zenith Global Consulting." Hearing Ethan's answer, Chloe's look suddenly shifted with an expression of sudden interest. She continued, "My goodness, what a coincidence. That's one of the firms my father's company works with. In fact, we're currently evaluating one of your investment proposals. By any chance, do you have a business card?" Ethan took a card from his wallet and handed it to her. Chloe gave him hers as well. Nora simply smiled, observing the scene. Sitting across from Ethan at a trendy Italian bistro, Nora was overflowing with happiness. She vividly remembered how just 2 months ago in that very spot Ethan had proposed. "Nora, you are the greatest gift in my life. I will make you happy forever." When Ethan knelt and offered her the ring, the surrounding tables erupted in applause. That moment still felt like a dream. Ethan took Nora's hand and said, "Next month we will really be husband and wife." "Yes, I'm so happy. I can't wait for our honeymoon in Paris," Nora replied with an excited voice. At 11 p.m., back at her apartment, Nora was on the phone with her mother. "My baby girl, who would have thought you'd grown up so fast and are getting married? Ethan is a very lucky man. Mom, please. I'm lucky too to have found someone like him." After hanging up, Nora immersed herself in happy fantasies while flipping through a decorating magazine for their future home. A white-toned living room, a cozy bedroom, a small home office. Everything seemed like it would be perfect. Just then, she received a text from Ethan. "Nora, I'm meeting with Ms. Beaumont tomorrow. It's about the investment deal. I think it could be a massive opportunity." Nora responded without giving it much thought. "Of course, that's great. I hope you have excellent results." Nora smiled. In 1 month, she would be Ethan's wife. Her skill honed by working in the luxury sector of Neiman Marcus, the family she would soon form. Everything was on track. It was the happiest moment of her life. Through the window, the New York City skyline glittered. Nora was convinced her future would be as brilliant as those lights. However, fate sometimes takes unexpected turns. The employee break room was a breeding ground for gossip during lunch hour. As Nora ate her salad, Jenna, a more experienced colleague, sat down beside her. "Nora, you know Chloe Beaumont, right? The VIP client." "Yes, of course. She often asks for me." Jenna lowered her voice and whispered. "She is a true collector of men. Last year she changed boyfriends 3 times, and the rumor is that one of them was married." "Oh, come on, Jenna. I'm sure the rumors are exaggerated," Nora said, shaking her head. "No, it's true, because she comes from old money. She isn't afraid of anything. They say she especially enjoys taking men from other women. She's the type of person who has to get everything she wants to feel satisfied." Nora laughed and dismissed the matter. "Does a person like that really exist? You must be watching too many soap operas." Jenna sighed. "Don't be so naive. The world is full of vipers like that." That afternoon, Nora went to an upscale lounge in Soho to meet a college friend and give her a wedding invitation in person. After having a nice time, as she was leaving, she recognized a familiar back at a corner table. It was Ethan, and sitting across from him was Chloe Beaumont. Chloe had her hand delicately resting on the back of Ethan's hand. Their gazes met, creating a strange atmosphere. Nora's heart pounded. Her legs trembled. Ethan, seeing her, jumped up, quickly pulled his hand away and stood. "Nora, what are you doing here?" "Hello, Nora. So good to see you," Chloe said with a relaxed smile, not showing the slightest surprise. That calmness disturbed Nora even more. Chloe gestured toward a chair naturally. "Why don't you sit for a moment? We were just talking about Mr. Parker's project." When Nora sat down, Ethan hurriedly unfolded some documents and began to explain. "Ms. Beaumont's father's company has shown interest in our project. It's just a business meeting." "I see." Nora's voice was faint. She felt a tightness in her chest. "Mr. Parker is a very talented man." "I envy you, Nora," Chloe said with an enigmatic tone. Her words had a hidden edge. Throughout the conversation, a subtle tension floated between Chloe and Ethan. He didn't dare to look Nora in the eyes, while Chloe appeared completely self-assured. "Well, I should get going." "You two keep talking," Nora said, standing up. She couldn't stand to be there for another second. "Nora, let's go together." Ethan quickly followed her in the rideshare back home. Silence reigned. Nora was the first to speak. "Why was she holding your hand?" "It's not what it looks like. We were looking at the documents together and we accidentally brushed hands." Nora wanted to believe him. She had to believe him. 1 week later, the wedding was just around the corner. While Nora was having her final wedding dress fitting, the wedding planner asked her, "Your fiancé seems incredibly busy lately, doesn't he? It was hard to get a hold of him." "Yes, he's very tied up with work these days." The truth was, since the incident at the lounge, Ethan had become distant. When they saw each other, the atmosphere was awkward, and they barely spoke. But Nora forced herself to ignore it, telling herself it was just the stress of the preparations. Leaving the fitting, her friends took her to a cafe. "Nora, don't you feel like Ethan has been a little off lately?" her best friend asked with concern. "It's the work. He's on a very important project," Nora replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "Still a week before the wedding? He's neglecting you too much, don't you think?" "It's fine. Once we're married, we'll be together for life," Nora said, forcing a smile. The night before the wedding, at 10 p.m., Nora was in bed talking on the phone with Ethan. "Sweetheart, it's tomorrow." "I'm so nervous." "Don't be nervous. I'm a little tired. I'm going to sleep now. Good night." Even after hanging up, Nora couldn't fall asleep. "Why am I so uneasy? I'm getting married tomorrow." Suddenly, she remembered Jenna's words. "Chloe loves to steal other people's boyfriends." "It can't be. We've been together for 5 years. Tomorrow we'll be husband and wife. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine." Nora hugged her pillow tightly and closed her eyes, but the anxiety in her chest wouldn't disappear. It was like the calm before the storm, a sinister premonition that enveloped her completely. On the wedding day at 9 in the morning, Nora arrived at the salon where the staff greeted her enthusiastically. As she sat down in the makeup chair, her face was somewhat tense, but soon the excitement overtook her. "Please make me more beautiful than ever today," Nora said with anticipation. The makeup artist smiled as she began applying the foundation. While watching her transformation in the mirror, Nora called Ethan, but she received no answer, only the long dial tone. While she was being made up, her college friends arrived. "Wow, Nora, you look like a goddess," one of them exclaimed. Although everyone praised her beauty, Nora's gaze never left her phone. In the bridal waiting room, Nora in her wedding dress was radiant, but Ethan still hadn't appeared. The guests started to arrive and the venue filled with murmurs. "I don't see the groom. He hasn't arrived yet." The whispers of the guests reached Nora's room and her anxiety grew by the moment. Just then, one of Ethan's co-workers named Caleb entered the room. He was pale and his forehead was beaded with sweat. After hesitating for a moment, he finally spoke. "Nora, the truth is Ethan submitted his resignation yesterday." "What? What do you mean?" Nora's voice trembled. Caleb lowered his head and continued. "He said he was going to work for Ms. Beaumont's company. He packed up all his things and left yesterday." The color drained from Nora's face. She stared at Caleb, stunned with an expression of disbelief. At that precise moment, a message notification sounded on her phone. It was from Ethan. "Nora, I'm sorry. I've decided to leave with Chloe." Nora's hands shook. The message continued. "You are a good person, but I need a bigger world." Chloe showed Meth that world. Attached to the message was a photo. It was taken in an airport VIP lounge. Ethan and Chloe were sitting next to each other. On the table were 2 business-class tickets destined for Paris, and a diamond ring sparkled on Chloe's finger. A choked gasp escaped Nora's lips. Everything collapsed in that instant. She couldn't even cry. The shock was so great that her body seemed to have frozen. "Nora, snap out of it." Her friends shook her, but she couldn't speak a word. It was hard to breathe. Her chest felt torn apart. Outside, the guests' murmurs grew louder. When 11:00 passed without the ceremony beginning, everyone became concerned. Nora's father entered the room. Understanding the situation, his face paled, but someone had to take charge. He took a deep breath and walked out to the main ballroom. "I apologize to everyone. Today's wedding is canceled. We are deeply sorry, especially to those who traveled from afar." The ballroom filled with a general buzz. "Oh my God, they're saying the groom ran off. Seriously, the day of the wedding? Poor thing. How awful." Some looked at her with pity. Others whispered with curiosity. There were even some who pulled out their phones to take pictures. In the bridal room, her friends helped Nora stand. "Nora, let's get out of here." She stood with their help, but swayed as if she were about to faint. As she quietly left through the back door, someone raised their mobile phone and began recording a video. The car carrying Nora left the ceremony location. The spring sunlight that day seemed especially harsh. The day she had believed just a few hours earlier would be the happiest of her life had turned into a hellish nightmare. "Ethan," Nora murmured. "How? How could you do this, Tom?" The car moved in silence down the highway and tears finally began to flow from Nora's eyes. The drops falling on her wedding dress looked like broken pearls. The night of the day her wedding turned into a disaster, Nora's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Curled up on the sofa, she picked it up with trembling hands. Her heart stopped. The online world was mocking her. Someone had recorded a video at the ceremony, and it had already been shared tens of thousands of times with the title, "The Wedding Where the Groom Fled." In the video, Nora was clearly seen collapsing in her wedding dress. The comments were like daggers to her heart. Some laughed, saying that money is everything. Others scoffed that a millionaire's daughter had stolen the groom and that class differences cannot be overcome. But the most shocking thing was Chloe's Instagram account. A few days later, she posted a picture with Ethan with the Eiffel Tower in the background and the text, "Finally with my love." The post full of heart emojis was like driving a nail into Nora's chest. She wanted to throw the phone, but she couldn't look away. In the photo, Ethan looked happy. He was smiling more radiantly than he ever had with her. 1 week passed. Nora gathered the courage to return to work at Neiman Marcus. She dressed in a black suit and applied her makeup as usual, but the woman she saw in the mirror was a stranger. When she entered the luxury section, the atmosphere was tense. Clients looked at her and whispered. Someone tried to take a picture of her with their phone. Others watched her with pity. Isn't that the employee from the canceled wedding? Yes, the one the groom left at the altar. Nora heard the whispers. She lowered her head and walked into the store, but she felt every gaze fixed on her back. Her colleagues greeted her with forced smiles. No one dared to speak to her. All morning, Nora tried to hold on, but when a VIP client approached her and said with a compassionate voice, "Miss Bennett, I'm so sorry. It must have been terrible to go through something like that," she broke down. Tears began to well up in her eyes. She couldn't take it anymore. At lunchtime, Nora walked into the manager's office. "I can't do this anymore." "I'm sorry, sir. It's not your fault, Nora. People will forget about it in a little while." Although the manager tried to dissuade her, Nora's decision was firm. Leaving the place where she had worked for 5 years, where she had been the star salesperson, was a very hard step. Now she would only be remembered as the abandoned woman. Back home, Nora locked herself in her room, drew the curtains, turned off the light, and curled up in the darkness. Days passed without her noticing the time. Her mother called dozens of times, but she didn't answer. She didn't read her friends' messages either. What did I do wrong? She blamed herself incessantly. Did I not love Ethan enough? Was I not as attractive as Chloe? Unanswered questions tormented her. Finally, Nora deleted all her social media accounts, cutting off any connection to the world. 2 weeks later, one night, Nora ran out of food and had to go out to a 24-hour convenience store. She pulled her hoodie over her head and covered her face with a mask, but she couldn't hide her haggard appearance. She was choosing some instant noodles when someone spoke to her. "Excuse me, are you the lady from Neiman Marcus on 5th Avenue? Nora turned around in surprise. A man about 45 years old, in an impeccable suit and an affable appearance, stood in front of her. "You have the wrong person," Nora said, embarrassed, trying to run away. "I'm sure it's you," the man insisted. "I saw you several times in the department store. My mother was a regular client of yours. She always said you were incredibly kind." Nora, with her head down, replied in a low voice, "I don't work there anymore. I'm not that person anymore." The man pulled a business card from his pocket. "Forgive me, I haven't introduced myself. I'm Daniel Reed, a producer at ShopStream." As Nora made no move to take it, Daniel gently placed it on the instant noodles. "Your talent is being wasted. Since I saw you in the store, I knew you had something special." Daniel looked at her seriously. "I know you are going through a difficult time now, but if you ever feel like getting back up, call me. I think I could offer you a new opportunity in TV shopping." Nora looked up at Daniel. In his eyes, there was sincerity. "Why are you telling this to me?" she asked with a trembling voice. Daniel smiled kindly. "Because in my eyes, you haven't fallen. You've just sat down to rest for a moment, and I believe that the people who have been sitting are the ones who can jump the highest when they get back up." After saying this, Daniel left the store. Nora was left staring at the card in her hand. The words "Daniel Reed, ShopStream producer" looked sharp despite her tear-blurred vision. Back home, while eating the noodles, she kept looking at the card. Daniel's words echoed in her head. The people who have been sitting are the ones who can jump the highest when they get back up. While Ethan and Chloe are enjoying Paris, I can't keep hiding and eating instant noodles, Nora murmured to herself. A feeling, a mix of desire for vengeance and pride, began to grow within her. 1 week passed. Nora picked up and put down Daniel's card dozens of times. Finally, she gathered the courage and called. "Mr. Reed, it's Nora. Could we meet?" "Of course, Nora," Daniel replied with a cheerful voice. "How about tomorrow afternoon?" The next day, Nora went to the agreed-upon cafe. It was a quiet place. Daniel greeted her with a warm smile. After a sip of coffee, he began to speak. "I observed you selling. You are a true natural. It seemed like clients opened their wallets as soon as you started talking." "I was just doing my job with dedication," Nora replied, shaking her head. "No, not anyone can do that. TV shopping isn't that different. Give it a try. With a talent like yours, you'll definitely succeed." Just then, she heard whispering at the next table. "Hey, isn't that the one from the failed wedding?" "Yes, I think so. I saw the ceremony video." Nora's face paled. Her hands started to shake. Daniel asked if she was okay. But Nora abruptly stood up. "I'm sorry, Mr. Reed. I don't want to be in the public eye anymore." Her voice was shaking. "I have stage fright, and above all, I don't have confidence in myself. I don't think I can do it." With that, Nora ran out of the cafe. She heard Daniel call her name, but she didn't look back. Back home, she locked herself in her room again. She regretted having had that burst of courage. She threw the business card in the trash. 3 days later, in the early hours of the morning, Nora's phone rang insistently. It was the distressed voice of her aunt. "Nora, something terrible has happened. Your mother has collapsed." When Nora arrived at the hospital, her mother was in the emergency room. The doctor's diagnosis was shocking, a stroke that required immediate surgery. The cost was $30,000. Nora's face went white. She didn't have private insurance, and she had spent all her savings on the wedding preparations. Desperate, she went to the bank, but as she was unemployed, they denied her the loan. She thought about contacting her former coworkers, but her pride wouldn't allow it. Asking them for money, knowing they knew her whole story, was too humiliating. Crying, sitting in the hospital hallway, she suddenly remembered the card she had thrown away. She ran home and rummaged through the trash bin. She found the crumpled card. After hesitating for a long time, she called again. "Mr. Reed, it's me. Nora, is your offer still on the table?" "Of course, has something happened?" Hearing Daniel's concerned voice, Nora burst into tears. She told him sobbing about her mother and the operation. Daniel listened calmly and then said, "Let's start tomorrow morning." The next day, Nora visited the ShopStream studio. It was full of bright lights and dozens of cameras. A team member explained to her, "It's live. There can be no mistakes. You have to talk nonstop for 40 minutes. Nora watched other hosts rehearse. She felt intimidated seeing how they presented products with impeccable eloquence, but at the same time, something ignited inside her. The idea that if she succeeded on that stage, Ethan and Chloe might see her. Daniel handed her a multifunction pressure cooker. "This is your first product. The show is in 1 week, so prepare well." Back home, Nora began to memorize the instruction manual. She rehearsed in front of the mirror, stammering at first, but when she thought of Ethan's face, her voice became clearer. "At Neiman Marcus, only a few clients saw me. Now millions will see me," she muttered, looking at herself in the mirror. She was afraid, but she also felt a great thrill. Still, the idea of talking for 40 minutes about a pressure cooker seemed overwhelming. Suddenly, she thought of Ethan, happy in Paris with Chloe. Nora's gaze sharpened. "Ethan, Chloe, you two did this to me. You abandoned me and made me the laughingstock." She clenched her fists. Rage coursed through her body. At 3 a.m, Nora got up and re-examined the cooker. She mentally reviewed everything she had memorized, the stainless steel material, the safety systems. She practiced her smile in front of the mirror, a confident expression, a warm voice. It was time to deploy the skills she had perfected in the luxury store on a much bigger stage. "I can do it." "No, I have to succeed," she promised herself. It wasn't just a matter of survival. It was the start of the revenge that would show those who had abandoned her. On the morning of the broadcast day, Nora dressed in a sharp black suit and applied perfect makeup. The woman in the mirror looked self-assured. The wound of the failed wedding was still there, but she decided to use it as fuel to burn brighter. In the ride share to the set, she checked Ethan and Chloe's social media. She saw their happy posts from Paris. Nora gave a cold smile and put her phone away. "You'll regret this soon. You'll regret abandoning me." The car stopped in front of the network building. Nora took a deep breath and got out. She looked at the imposing building and made a promise to herself. Today would be the beginning of her revenge. And with a firm step, she entered. "I will succeed in a big way." As the elevator ascended, Nora kept repeating those words. The desire for vengeance overcame the fear, and determination devoured the anxiety. When the studio doors opened, Nora walked in with an expression of absolute conviction. A new war was about to begin. When the studio doors opened, a blast of cold air conditioning hit Nora's face. There were 3 hours left until the broadcast. Tension seized her. In the makeup room, her hands began to tremble. Just 2 months ago, she was the queen of the Neiman Marcus luxury section. Now she was a novice host about to debut. "Relax, don't be so nervous," the makeup artist told her while applying foundation. "It's your first show, right?" Nora nodded. A more experienced host, a woman in her 40s who was preparing next to her, approached. With a warm smile, she patted Nora on the shoulder. "Just pretend you're talking to a friend. There are no cameras." But her words did not console Nora. Talking to a friend was very different from speaking in front of millions of viewers. When the makeup was finished and she went to the set, her legs felt weak. The rehearsal began. Nora stood in front of the camera, clutching the script tightly. As soon as the red light turned on, her mind went blank. She could barely open her mouth. Her voice trembled, and she struggled even to read the script. "This pressure cooker is made of stainless steel." Her rigid voice echoed in the studio as if she were a robot. "Nora, you're too stiff. Smile more naturally." Nora forced a smile, but her face was tense. The letters on the script blurred, and she couldn't remember anything she had memorized. The rehearsal was a disaster. The crew's faces darkened. Daniel Reed approached. His expression was serene, but there was encouragement in his eyes. "Don't worry, the live show will be different." But Nora was not so sure. As the time approached, the tension mounted. Back in the dressing room, she was on the verge of throwing up. Her pale face in the mirror looked like a stranger's. At 2 p.m., the live broadcast began. Nora was in the center of the set with the pressure cooker on a table. When the red light turned on, her mind went completely empty. She couldn't remember a single one of the phrases she had prepared. Her lips trembled and her voice wouldn't come out. Hello everyone. Today this product." The image of a stammering Nora was broadcast live across the country. She almost dropped the cooker when trying to pick it up, and stumbled when trying to explain its functions. 10 minutes passed and not a single order call came in. The team's faces were very serious. Sweat beaded on Daniel's forehead. At this rate, the broadcast would be a disaster. It seemed she wouldn't last even 10 minutes, much less 40. Just then, tears escaped Nora's eyes. The camera captured the instant. With a trembling voice, she began to speak. "I'm so sorry, everyone. The truth is, I'm incredibly nervous." These were not words in the script. The crew was perplexed, but Nora continued. "It's my first show, but this pot is genuinely good. I tested it myself." As she gently touched the cooker, her voice began to steady. "My mother is in the hospital right now, and I would love to be able to cook for her with this. Hospital food isn't very good. If I prepared the chicken and rice soup she loves so much, it would surely turn out delicious." Her sincere confession moved the viewers. The live chat began to fill with comments. "Cheer up, hope your mother recovers soon." Nora wiped away her tears and started explaining the cooker's features. She was no longer looking at the script. She spoke naturally, as if recommending a good product to a friend. The warmth she had shown when talking to customers in the luxury store had returned. Suddenly, the order phones began to ring. "One call, two." In an instant, the lines were jammed. The order counter at the bottom of the screen climbed at breakneck speed. "Sold out in 8 minutes," Nora exclaimed in surprise. The studio filled with murmurs. A novice selling out the stock in 8 minutes was unprecedented. The rest of the time was dedicated to announcing the restock and presenting the next product. When the show ended, the team burst into applause. Their faces showed disbelief. Daniel approached Nora and hugged her tightly. "Didn't I tell you? You are a natural." It was then that Nora realized she had done it. Her hands were still trembling, but this time it was from emotion. She rushed to the hospital. Through the ICU glass, she looked at her mother and whispered, "Mom, I did it." Her mother smiled weakly and raised her hand. Seeing her, Nora burst into tears. Time had been difficult, but in the end she had succeeded. That night, the internet was buzzing. She was nicknamed the multi-cooker queen, and her emotional broadcast became a phenomenon. Compliments on her honest and warm delivery poured in. When she cried talking about her mom, I cried too. I've never seen a TV shopping show like that. Daniel's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Requests for her next show were flooding in. Overnight, Nora became the Cinderella of the TV shopping world. Meanwhile, in a hotel in Paris, Ethan looked at his laptop. Searching for news from the States, he found an article. TV shopping. Rookie achieves milestone, sells out stock in 8 minutes. When he clicked, a photo of Nora appeared. Nora on TV shopping. Ethan's expression was a mixture of emotions. He searched for the video. Seeing Nora cry during the broadcast, he felt a strange pang in his heart. Chloe, who was drinking wine beside him, glanced at the screen. My, Ms. Bennett, how industrious, she said with a mocking tone, but a hint of Eunice flickered in her eyes. As Ethan continued watching the video, Chloe's voice became sharper. Are you still thinking about that woman? Ethan closed the laptop. He said no, but his mind was chaos. The news of Nora's success on TV shopping for some reason weighed heavily on his heart. That night, back home, Nora reviewed the day's events in bed. She had made many mistakes, but in the end, she had triumphed. The nickname, the multi-cooker queen, didn't bother her. Did you see that, Ethan? I'm succeeding here too, she murmured to herself. She felt a great satisfaction, as if she had taken the first step of her revenge. She was sure that tomorrow she would do even better. And so began Nora's new challenge. Under the warm light of a trendy gastro pub, Nora and Daniel Reed sat face to face. A week had passed since the successful debut. Daniel had organized a celebratory meetup. At first, Nora refused, but faced with his sincere look, she finally gave in. As he raised his wine glass, Daniel looked into the distance and began to speak. 10 years ago, my fiancé scammed me. Nora looked at him in surprise. Daniel gave a bitter smile and continued. She ran off with $60,000. It was all my savings, the money I had put aside for the wedding. He poured another glass and went on. He told how his fiancée disappeared with another man and how he lived like a wreck for 3 years. Nora listened in silence. Her own pain seemed small in comparison to his. That's why when I see you, I remember my old self betrayed in the same way, suffering in the same way. Daniel looked at Nora. His eyes were warm. Don't try to seek vengeance. Success is the best revenge. You have talent. Develop it, Nora nodded. Daniel's words reached her heart. They talked late into the night. There was a comfort and an empathy that only people who have been hurt can share. The next day, Nora's true training began. Every morning at 5 a.m., she went to the network's rehearsal room to practice her diction. She practiced facial expressions and gestures in front of the mirror. Daniel personally supervised her. Don't memorize the product manual. The important thing is to understand it. Translate it into your own words. Daniel's advice was concrete and practical. Nora took detailed notes in a notebook. She also learned to analyze products. Don't look at the camera lens. Look at the people behind it. If you think you are recommending it to a good friend, everything will come out more naturally. Following Daniel's teachings, Nora changed her attitude toward the camera. She stopped seeing it as an intimidating machine and began to think of it as the eyes of a friend. The tension decreased. Every day she practiced alone in the rehearsal room talking to the camera. After 1 month, Nora had changed remarkably. Simone, a 35-year-old veteran host, highly respected in the sector, approached her, impressed. Nora, there's something different about you. You speak from the heart, she said, offering her a coffee. The two quickly became friends. Simone generously shared her knowledge with Nora. How to identify the key points of each product, how to capture the audience's attention, how to manage time. The camera operators and scriptwriters also appreciated Nora. Her honest and warm personality had won the team's heart. After every broadcast, they met to discuss how to improve the show. In the second month, they celebrated the first company dinner. The entire team gathered at a trendy brewery. The lighting director raised his glass and toasted. To our Nora, she's a machine. 10 sellout shows in just 2 months. Everyone applauded. The scriptwriter commented, laughing. Now you really look like a professional. Look how nervous you were at the beginning. Nora blushed but felt proud. It was proof that her work was being recognized. Daniel subtly approached her and whispered, Dare to try to be the #1 salesperson this month? Nora looked at him in surprise. For a rookie to achieve that goal was almost impossible, but Daniel's gaze was serious. If a rookie achieves it, she becomes a legend, and you can do it. After thinking for a moment, Nora nodded. I'll try. From that day on, her preparation was even more rigorous. She studied every product thoroughly and analyzed the competition's shows. But Nora began to adopt a completely different approach from the other hosts. One day, while presenting a high-end vacuum cleaner, she said, I'll be honest. This is expensive. $4,200 is a lot of money. The team was perplexed, saying openly that it was expensive. But Nora continued, But think about it. It's going to last you 10 years. For less than the cost of a daily coffee, you can live in a spotless home. The audience reaction was explosive. Her sincerity generated trust. Another day, presenting a more affordable product, she said, Honestly, this is cheap. And because it's cheap, it's not the highest quality, but for this price, the quality it offers is genuinely good. Her honest, no exaggeration approach became her trademark. Nora gained confidence. She stopped imitating other hosts and started speaking in her own voice, in her own way. One day, she accidentally dropped a product. Without losing her composure, she said, Whoops, I dropped it. But look, it didn't break. That's how durable it is. Viewers were fascinated by her quick reaction, and the product sold out in minutes. The Nora style had become a brand. She was transforming into a true professional. The woman expelled from the luxury store was now the rising star of TV shopping. That night in the rehearsal room, Nora said to herself in the mirror, Are you watching this, Ethan? I'm succeeding in my own way. The woman in the mirror looked confident and strong. The birth of the Nora style wasn't just a sales technique. It was the victory of authenticity. 3 months later, Nora was in front of a specialized refrigerator for cheeses and cured meats, a product costing over $3,500, but the team's faces were optimistic. Everyone knew her presence guaranteed success. The following week, she appeared with a handbag from a little-known brand, a small American company. Honestly, this is probably the first time you've heard of this brand, but its durability is just as good as the big luxury firms, and the price is 10 times less. Nora folded the bag and put heavy objects in it to demonstrate its resilience. It sold out in just 5 minutes. The audience and her time slot doubled. The programming team called an emergency meeting. They finally created a special segment called Nora's Moment during the prime time slot at 8 p.m. And 1 month later, a new segment was born, Nora's Selection. In it, Nora personally visited small businesses to discover exceptional products. For her first product, she traveled to a small rural town in Georgia. In front of a building that looked like an old warehouse, she was awaited by a 70-year-old woman, a producer of artisanal spice blends with 50 years of tradition. Her hands were hardened by work and her face marked by time. The woman quietly told her that her son had passed away and her daughter-in-law had left, leaving her in charge of her 2 grandchildren. She was barely surviving by selling her spice rub. Nora, whose own wound had not yet healed, was touched by the old woman's story. On the day of the broadcast, Nora told the woman's story with simplicity, without exaggeration. She simply conveyed the flavor and dedication of 50 years and the old woman's desperation. In less than 10 minutes, 1 year's worth of production was sold. The woman called her crying to thank her. This event was news across all media. Articles with headlines like A New Era in TV Shopping and The Miracle of Nora's Selection flooded the press. Days later, letters arrived at the network. Thank you letters from small businesses that had been revived thanks to her. Nora read them feeling a deep sense of pride. She realized she wasn't just selling products. She was changing lives. But where there is light, there is also shadow. Negative comments began to appear online. What does she know coming from a snobby store? A woman whose groom left her at the altar acting like a pro. Comments about her failed wedding hurt her especially. Sometimes she cried alone in her apartment. But fans also emerged who supported her unconditionally. During her shows, the chat filled with messages of encouragement. Her followers chanted her name and filled the screen with hearts. A community of fans as solid as that of any celebrity had formed. At 11 p.m., Nora arrived home exhausted. The woman reflected in the mirror was completely different from the one 3 months ago. Her haggard face had regained vitality, and her dull gaze now shone with determination, but the wound deep in her heart was still there. "Are you watching this, Ethan?" she murmured to the mirror. "You abandoned me, but I got this far, and I'm going to climb even higher." She clenched her fists so hard that her fingernails dug into her palms. "I don't need the money or the influence of Chloe's family. It got here on my own merit. You'll see how far I can go." Her desire for vengeance had not faded. On the contrary, it grew stronger with every success. Every sales record, every thank you letter reminded her of those who had abandoned and humiliated her. Through the window, the New York City nightscape was visible. Just a few months ago, those lights had seemed cold. Now she felt they shone for her. She checked her schedule for the next day. A factory visit in the morning, a product meeting in the afternoon, a live show at night. She was exhausted, but she couldn't allow herself to falter. A flame burned in Nora's eyes. The vengeance was not yet over. In fact, this was just the beginning. 5 years later, Nora was no longer a TV shopping host. She was in her CEO office on the 10th floor of a downtown Chicago building reviewing documents at the headquarters of BennettCo. The change in 5 years had been astonishing. From TV shopping star to successful businesswoman, the marketing team came in for the pre-launch meeting of BennettCo's first product. The team leader reported enthusiastically, "Madam CEO, the response to the cosmetic line Cosmetics for Traders is explosive." The name of the cosmetic line was provocative, but the slogan was brilliant. "Even if they betray you, don't let your skin." This phrase, both self-deprecating and humorous, went viral on social media. In just one day, the crowdfunding campaign raised $1 million. Sponsor comments flooded the page. Nora's personal story had become her brand. The director of a venture capital fund visited her office. The man in his 50s told her with admiration, "Ms. Bennett, you are marketing in its purest form. We want to invest." She received an investment of $10 million. BennettCo grew at a dizzying pace, expanding from cosmetics to home goods and fashion. All her products reflected her philosophy, honesty, practicality, and a touch of humor. By the end of the year, BennettCo's revenues exceeded $100 million. The company had over 100 employees and had acquired a 10-story building in the heart of the city. An incredible growth. The press described it as the 5-year miracle. Awards poured in. CEO of the Year, Businesswoman Award. Nora stepped onto the stage. She smiled as she received the trophies, but a part of her heart felt strangely empty. A journalist from an economic magazine requested an interview. Sitting in front of the camera, Nora showed her usual smile. "What is the secret to your success?" "Not being afraid to fail and getting up every time you fall." The journalist cautiously seemed to want to bring up the subject of her failed wedding, but Nora skillfully diverted the conversation. She had learned not to talk about her past. One Friday night in December, a big party was held at the company headquarters to commemorate the $100 million in revenue. Numerous personalities attended. Nora, in a stunning gown, was the center of attention. Daniel Reed, with even grayer hair, gave an emotional speech. "Nora is like a daughter to me. I still remember her desolate look when I first met her, and seeing her now transformed into a successful CEO." The applause resonated. Nora hugged Daniel tightly. He had been her true savior. The party continued into thelid hours. Champagne flowed and congratulations never ceased. Everyone envied Nora. When the party ended and everyone left, Nora remained alone in her office. She turned off the lights, walked over to the window, and contemplated the Chicago nightscape with a glass of wine in her hand. The red wine stained her lips. Suddenly, she remembered that day 10 years ago. Her and her wedding dress collapsed. Ethan's message, the photo of their departure to Paris. It all seemed as vivid as if it had been yesterday. If Ethan hadn't fled that day, today would be our 10th anniversary. Would we have a couple of kids? Would I be a normal, ordinary housewife? Nora gave a bitter smile. "This is my revenge," she murmured in the empty office. She had triumphed. In everyone's eyes, she was a resounding success. But why did she feel that emptiness in her chest? Why wasn't she happy? She took another sip of wine. She thought she had moved past Ethan, but she felt she still hadn't escaped his shadow. She had run in pursuit of revenge, but upon reaching the top, there was nothing. She took out her phone and searched for Ethan's name online, but deleted it instantly. She searched for Chloe and deleted that too. She wanted to know how they lived, but at the same time, she didn't want to know. Why do I feel so empty? She leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. 100 million in revenue, 100 employees, all kinds of awards. She had everything, but she wasn't satisfied. They say revenge is sweet, but only a bitter taste remained in her mouth. Back home, she looked at herself in the mirror. The woman in the dazzling dress was a stranger. She slowly took off the dress and put on comfortable clothes. As she removed her makeup, her natural face appeared. Was this what I wanted? And now what? She asked herself. The revenge was over. The success was achieved. But true happiness was still nowhere to be found. 5 years after their return from Paris, Ethan was an executive at Mr. Beaumont's company. One ordinary afternoon, Chloe walked into his office without knocking. Surprise, she said with a smile that instantly froze. On Ethan's computer screen, a video of one of Nora's TV shopping programs was paused. The Nora's Selection logo was clearly visible. Ethan tried to close the window in a hurry, but it was too late. What is this? Are you still thinking about her? You're next to me, but you're thinking about Nora. Chloe's voice was sharp. Ethan, nervous, tried to excuse himself. I was just browsing online. But Chloe was about to explode. Her eyes reflected a deep betrayal. The fact that after 10 years, Ethan had not forgotten Nora wounded her pride. Days later, at a meeting with friends, Chloe suffered a humiliation. One of them took out a BennettCo cosmetic product and began to praise it. This is incredible. It's from the Cosmetics for Traders line. Even the name is funny. Everyone laughed, but Chloe's face turned white. That woman. If I hadn't taken Ethan from her, she'd still be a simple sales clerk, she muttered to herself. Wounded in her pride, she went to see her father. Mr. Beaumont's office on the top floor offered a panoramic view of the city. Dad, I want you to make things difficult for a company called BennettCo. Mr. Beaumont, just by seeing his daughter's expression, knew what was happening. He looked thoughtful. In reality, BennettCo was already a competitor to his cosmetics division. Why? What's wrong with our cosmetics division? I want you to ruin her, but legally. Mr. Beaumont looked at his daughter. He saw envy and hatred in her eyes. He sighed and nodded. He had never denied her anything. 1 week later, strange rumors began to circulate online. That during her time at Neiman Marcus, Nora had had complicated relationships with men. That the wedding was canceled because she was caught cheating on Ethan. Even manipulated photos of her alleged pre-cosmetic surgery circulated. They created an image of Nora as a gold digger. An army of trolls acted in an organized manner. Reviews of BennettCo products were filled with negative comments and a boycott campaign began. Messages like boycott the products of a fraudster spread across the network. The effect was immediate. BennettCo sales fell by 30% in 1 month. Investors began to worry, and some demanded the return of their money. Nora called an emergency meeting. The marketing chief's chair was empty. Her secretary cautiously informed her. The head of marketing has submitted his resignation. He's going to Mr. Beaumont's company. Nora's face paled. Heck knew all of BennettCo's strategies. The company's trade secrets had fallen into the hands of the competition. They say, Mr. Beaumont offered him 3 times his salary, someone whispered. The betrayal stabbed Nora in the heart. It was the first she had suffered on her road to success. To make matters worse, suppliers began to terminate their contracts one after another. A buyer from a major department store told her with an apologetic face, I'm sorry, Ms. Bennett. We're being pressured from above. We were told that if we continue working with BennettCo, our relationship with them is over. All her main business partners turned their backs on her. Funding sources began to dry up. The employees' faces darkened and some started looking for other jobs. But the final blow was another one. The management of the TV shopping network banned Nora's appearances. Mr. Beaumont's lobby had worked. They threatened us to pull all their advertising if we allow Nora to appear, the network director told her with an expression of helplessness. ShopStream finally yielded. Nora's face would not appear on television again. Daniel Reed also found himself in a difficult situation. The head of HR called him into his office. Daniel, it seems you have a very close relationship with Ms. Bennett, and that puts the company in an uncomfortable position. It was an invitation to resign. Daniel was furious, but he couldn't do anything. He had been with that company for 20 years, but he was powerless against the corporate power. The offices of BennettCo gradually emptied. From 100 employees, 50 remained. Sales continued to fall and stock accumulated. The press also turned its back on her. Articles with headlines like "Crisis at BennettCo" and "It was all a bubble" filled the newspapers. One night, Nora was alone in the empty office. Notifications of contract terminations piled up on her desk. The phone rang. It was Daniel. "Nora, I'm sorry. I've been fired too." Tears swelled up in Nora's eyes. Because of her mentor had also been harmed. "It's not because of you, Mr. Reed. I'm the one who's sorry." After hanging up, Nora looked out the window. Everything she had built in 5 years was crumbling. She knew it was Chloe's revenge, but she had no way to defend herself. She opened her phone and saw an avalanche of negative comments. "Gold digger, fraudster, you're done for." She threw the phone. The sound of the screen cracking echoed in the empty office. Nora gave a forced smile. She was being attacked on all fronts. She had nowhere to run or hide. She was powerless against a total assault. At 3 a.m., Nora was still in the office. She tried to find a solution by reviewing documents, but she saw no way out. It was a different kind of pain than the shock of her failed wedding 10 years ago. Then she had collapsed alone. Now she was collapsing along with her 100 employees. On Monday morning, the atmosphere in the boardroom was frigid. The main investors were gathered, their faces impassive. The lead investor spoke. "Surrender the control of the company. Be quick about it." Nora tried to protest, but interrupted her with a gesture. "Either that or bankruptcy, you choose." The press also turned its back on her. Headlines like "The Fall of the BennettCo" myth-filled the newspapers. The same journalists who had once praised her now harshly criticized her. Her success story had overnight turned into a tale of failure. On Tuesday afternoon, Nora's phone rang. It was her friend from TV shopping, Simone. Her voice was shaking. "Nora, Daniel collapsed. He's in the emergency room." Nora felt her breath catch. She rushed to the hospital. The doctor explained that he had suffered a stroke due to extreme stress. They could not guarantee he would regain consciousness. Nora's legs failed her. It was her fault. Daniel had been fired for helping her, and the stress had led him to this state. The feeling of guilt crushed her. In front of the ICU, she ran into Daniel's wife. Her gaze was cold. "This is your fault. My husband is like this because of you." Nora tried to apologize, but the woman turned her back. "Don't ever show up here again." She had lost her only support. Nora collapsed in the hospital hallway, sobbing. Nurses looked at her with concern, but she didn't have the strength to get up. On Wednesday, a board of directors meeting was held. The remaining executives were blunt. The board chairman handed her a document. "Decide sale or resignation." Nora read the document. The buyer's name was Mr. Beaumont, Chloe's father. The conditions were humiliating. The purchase for 1/10 of its market value and a special clause. Nora Bennett is permanently barred from the sector. She is prohibited from working in the cosmetic and distribution industry for the next 10 years. It was total annihilation. They were taking away not only the company but also her future. But she had no choice. If she refused, her 50 employees would lose their jobs. "Think about your employees and decide." The last words of the board chairman were like a stab. Nora lowered her head. She didn't have the strength to continue fighting. That night, she went to see her mother. Seeing her daughter's haggard appearance, she hugged her tightly. Nora cried in her arms like a child. "Mom, I've lost everything. It's all over." Her mother gently stroked her hair. Her voice was warm but firm. "Nora, it's enough now." Nora looked at her, her face drenched in tears. "I want you to be happy. Success is fine. But your smile is more important," her mother said, squeezing her hand. "Let's live a simple life. Let's open a small shop. Let's live humbly." Her mother's words made Nora cry even more. She felt that the road she had traveled for 10 years had come to a dead end. Vengeance, success, everything was meaningless. "Yes, Mom, I'll quit," she replied, sobbing. She no longer had the strength to fight. She was exhausted, hurt, and above all, alone. In the early hours of Thursday morning, Nora was sitting alone in the empty office. On the table, the board's sales agreement and a resignation form, both blank. She picked up and put down the pen dozens of times. 10 years of effort would be reduced to a simple sheet of paper, but she still didn't have the courage to sign. Through the window, the sun rose. A new day was beginning, but for Nora, it seemed like the end. She put the documents in a drawer, leaned back in her chair, and closed her eyes. Does it really end like this? Tears swelled up again, but she didn't even have the strength to cry. She stared blankly at the floor. On Friday afternoon, Nora was sitting in a cafe near the office. She wanted to see the building one last time. Someone stopped in front of her. Looking up, she saw an unbelievable face, Ethan. They hadn't seen each other in 10 years, but he looked like a different person. His former air of confidence was gone, replaced by a haggard face and wrinkled clothes. "Nora, it's been a long time." His voice trembled. Nora looked at them coldly. She tried to get up, but Ethan stopped her. "I have something to tell you." "Please, just a moment." Nora sat down again, looking at him with an empty expression. Ethan sat across from her and with difficulty began to speak. "Chloe left me. She said I was no longer useful to her." Ethan's eyes reddened. He went on to explain that he had been fired from Mr. Beaumont's company due to poor performance, and Chloe had immediately kicked him out. He said he now understood how Nora had felt 10 years ago. "I'm so sorry." "I know how you felt now," Ethan said, lowering his head. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you, I'm sorry." Nora remained silent for a long time. Only the noise of the cafe filled the space between them. When she finally spoke, her voice was frigid. "And that's it? You come here now to tell me that?" Ethan looked at her. On Nora's face, there was no anger or sadness, only an absolute emptiness. "Do you think your apology will give me back my 10 years? Her voice began to rise. The contained emotion began to overflow. "I lived every day thinking I'll make you regret it. Every time I succeeded, I thought, see what you missed out on." She gave a bitter smile. "But now, seeing you look so pathetic, everything seems absurd." "It's disappointing." Ethan couldn't say anything. Nora stood up and looking at him one last time, she said, "I no longer have the desire to forgive you or the strength to hate you. I simply don't feel anything." She walked out of the cafe. Ethan remained seated as if frozen. Their 10-year reunion had ended in such a bland way. Arriving home, Nora collapsed as soon as she closed the door. She fell to the floor and burst into uncontrollable tears. Although she had appeared cold to Ethan, in reality her heart was torn. Endured 10 years for vengeance, she sobbed. On the living room wall were photos of her moments of success, her first sellout show, the founding of BennettCo, the 100 million in revenue. Every moment had been a step toward her revenge, and all this for what? She picked up a photo of her CEO appointment ceremony. She looked so happy, but she was actually smiling so Ethan could see her. "In the end, I lived trapped in the past." Self-pity overwhelmed her. Vengeance handled her to success, but it had also chained her. Now that the object of her revenge had disappeared, only emptiness remained. At 9 p.m., the phone rang. It was Mr. Beaumont. A cold voice told her, "Be here tomorrow at 10 to sign the contract." It was a short call. Nora simply replied and hung up. "Tomorrow everything will end." "Just give up already." Mr. Beaumont's last words echoed in her ears. She looked out the window. The city lights glittered, but her eyes saw nothing. She closed her eyes and sighed deeply. "Goodbye, my dreams." She bid farewell in a low voice. On Monday at 9 a.m., Nora left her office with the contract in her hand. In 1 hour, she would meet Mr. Beaumont to hand everything over. But in the building lobby, an incredible scene awaited her. More than 30 people were waiting for her. Ms. Bennett, a middle-aged man, approached her. He was the director of the small specialized refrigerator company she had featured on her show. Behind him were the elderly spice producer, the owner of the handbag company, and all the directors of the small businesses she had helped. "Madam CEO, don't go." the elderly spice producer said with a trembling voice, clutching Nora's hand with her wrinkled one. You saved us. Now it's our turn to help you. Nora's eyes filled with tears. The director of the refrigerator company stepped forward. We were on the verge of bankruptcy. Banks were denying us loans, but thanks to you, we were revived. The owner of the handbag company added, Me too. With just one show of yours, I sold 3 years' worth of stock. The company that couldn't even pay its employees is now exporting. A young female entrepreneur said through tears, I got the money for my daughter's surgery. If it hadn't been for you, my baby. She couldn't finish the sentence. Nora, who had contained her tears, burst into sobs. The 30 directors recounted one by one how Nora's selection had changed their lives. You gave us hope. Now we will give it to you. Her secretary brought a box full of hundreds of thank you letters from all over the country. Nora, with trembling hands, opened one. You weren't looking for revenge, but shared prosperity. To us, you are a savior. It was a letter from one of her employees. The others said the same thing, that thanks to her, they had survived, that they were grateful, that she shouldn't give up. Nora knelt, reading the letters, unable to stop crying. It was then that she realized what I built wasn't vengeance, she murmured through sobs. It was giving people opportunity. This is true success. She had run for 10 years thinking only of vengeance, but what she had really done was save countless people. She had just discovered the true value of her work. At that moment, her phone rang. It was the hospital. Ms. Bennett, Mr. Reed has regained consciousness. Nora ran to the hospital. Daniel, now in a regular room, greeted her with a weak smile. Nora, don't give up. His voice was weak but firm. You are the hope of many people. True revenge is dignity. It's not letting them tear you down. Nora squeezed his hand. Her mentor's return gave her immense strength. Returning to the company, the directors of the small businesses were waiting for her with fierce determination. We will become the majority shareholders. The director of their refrigerator company announced the 30 companies will jointly invest. We have raised $10 million urgently. It's not much, but we can start. Nora looked at them astonished. Knowing that this was the money they had worked so hard to gather moved her even more. At 2 p.m., an urgent press conference was held, called by the directors of the small businesses, not by Nora. One by one, they testified. The rumors about Ms. Bennett are false. We are the witnesses. She is a true entrepreneur. The atmosphere in the media began to change. The truth behind the fake news came to light. It was proven that the photos were manipulated and the testimonies false. Public opinion took a complete reversal, and then another unexpected twist occurred. One of the directors brought an attorney from a prestigious law firm. I will defend her pro bono. Justice must prevail. The attorney had already compiled evidence. Recordings of Chloe's team's bribes, evidence of the dissemination of fake news, and most importantly, an internal informant. An employee from Mr. Beaumont's office had decided to confess and testify about all the conspiracies. Nora couldn't believe it. When she was about to give up, so many people had reached out to her. The attorney handed her a document: defamation, obstruction of commercial activity, violation of the competition law. The lawsuit is ready. The directors of the small businesses surrounded Nora. Their gazes were full of confidence. Ms. Bennett, it's time to counterattack. Nora tore the sales contract into pieces. The pieces of paper fell to the floor. The light returned to her eyes. I will fight with all of you by my side. Everyone applauded. Nora's employees began tour turn. The suppliers who had left contacted her again. The situation had completely changed. Then the phone rang. It was Mr. Beaumont. Why aren't you here? Nora replied firmly, I'm not coming. Now it's my turn to attack. She hung up and took a deep breath. The fear had disappeared. She knew she wasn't alone. She had understood what true success was. That night in the office, Nora met with the directors of the small businesses to plan the counterattack strategy. Hope was visible on everyone's faces. This time she would not collapse. She had people by her side. They were the proof of her true success. At 2 a.m., Nora reread the letters. She cried, but this time they were tears of gratitude. It wasn't vengeance. It was shared prosperity. Now I understand. She looked out the window. The darkness was dissipating and the dawn was arriving. It was time for a truly new beginning. First thing in the morning, several black SUVs arrived at a downtown building. They were federal agents. They stormed the headquarters of Mr. Beaumont's company. Search warrant, nobody move. The employees froze. The agents began to seize documents and computers. Mr. Beaumont emerged from his office, pale and disconcerted. An inspector showed him the warrant. Stock manipulation, defamation, and obstruction of commercial activity. You have to come with us. The evidence Nora had provided was conclusive. The informant's testimony, the recordings, the documents ordering the fake news campaign. Everything was irrefutable. Executives were arrested one after another. Those who were once at the peak of power now got into the police cars with their heads down. At 2 p.m., even more shocking news arrived. Chloe had been arrested at her home for extortion, coercion, and obstruction of commercial activity. She came out in handcuffs. "Dad, save me!" she screamed, but it was useless. Reporters' cameras captured the moment. The woman who had once mocked Nora was now dragged away looking pitiful. She requested bail, but it was denied due to flight risk and destruction of evidence. The magnate's daughter ended up wearing a prison uniform. The media reaction was drastic. Overnight, the tone of all the articles changed. The victory of justice for Nora, the true villains, the dark face of a powerful family. As the investigation progressed, more crimes came to light. Mr. Beaumont had been manipulating the stock market and illegally attacking the competition for years. Nora's company was just one of his many victims. On Wednesday, in the courtroom, the trial began. Chloe, in her prison uniform, sat in the defendant's dock. Nothing remained of her former splendor. When the judge read the charges, she lowered her head. The prosecutor presented a recording of Chloe's voice, ordering the attack on BennettCo. How dare she be more successful than me? Completely ruin her. A murmur of indignation ran through the room. Chloe's malice was evident. Meanwhile, BennettCo was recovering at a dizzying pace. With the investment from the small businesses, the company resumed operations. The employees who had left returned, and the suppliers called again. On Friday night, a simple party was held in the office with the employees and the directors of the small businesses. It was not luxurious, but it was heartfelt. "We won thanks to all of you," Nora said. Everyone applauded. Someone shouted, "She's a national hero now." Nora waved her hand in denial, but it was true. She was no longer just a CEO. She was a symbol of justice, a hero who had fought and defeated injustice. On Monday morning, Nora opened the newspaper. The front page headline was "Mr. Beaumont to Prison." Next to it, a photo of Nora with an article proposing her as Person of the Year. She folded the newspaper. The past was truly over. Chloe and her father would receive their punishment, and Nora's company could start anew. Looking out the window of her office, she thought that although she had dreamed of vengeance, what she had achieved in the end was justice. That although she had tried to bring someone down, she had ended up lifting many people up. Her phone rang. It was ShopStream. "Ms. Bennett, could you return to our show? Viewers are demanding it." Nora smiled. "Yes, it's time to return." She hung up and took a deep breath. It was a new beginning. This time, not for vengeance, but for true success. On Monday, Nora stepped back onto the TV shopping set. In front of the camera, she greeted everyone with a radiant smile. "Hello everyone, I'm Nora Bennett. It's such a pleasure to see you again." Viewers' welcome messages crashed the system. Nora thanked them from her heart. It was because of them that she had been able to get back up. The show was a resounding success. They sold out the stock in 3 minutes. The legend of Nora continued that night. From her office, she contemplated the nightscape. The woman who had lost everything 10 years ago had now recovered everything. Or rather, she had achieved something much greater. True colleagues and success with meaning. It's truly over, she thought. The vengeance, the past. And for the first time, she smiled sincerely, a free smile without the burden of hating anyone. 3 years later, at the New York Stock Exchange, the name BennettCo appeared on the giant screens. Market capitalization, $1 billion. From the first day of trading, it hit the maximum limit. Camera flashes erupted and applause flooded the room. Nora stepped onto the podium. She was a completely different person, a firm posture, a smile full of confidence, the image of a true winner. She took the microphone and with a serene voice, she began to speak. My new beginning was a betrayal. The room fell silent. But my end is a thank you. Without the failure, there would have been no success. She looked up and scanned the audience. In the front row, Daniel Reed wept with emotion. The directors of the small businesses looked at her with pride. I was able to get up because I fell. I was able to find my path because I was abandoned. Thank you for every moment. The ovation was deafening. Nora bowed deeply and stepped down from the podium. As she left the building, a man approached her. He was a middle-aged valet. Congratulations, Ms. Bennett, he said as he opened the car door for her. Nora looked up to see him and caught her breath. It was Ethan. Nothing remained of the self-assured man he had been. Their gazes met. Time seemed to stop. Betrayal, vengeance, success, failure, everything passed through their minds in that brief instant. Thank you, Nora said with a calm voice devoid of emotion. Ethan silently lowered his head and stepped back. Nora got into the car and the door closed. As the car drove away, her secretary commented, That man is the new valet. He started a month ago. They say he's a hard worker. Nora looked out the window without saying or asking anything else. Ethan was just someone passing through her life now. She remembered that day, 10 years ago when she collapsed in her wedding dress, thinking everything was over. Nora smiled faintly and said to herself, Thank you, Ethan, for leaving me. The long journey of 10 years had ended. Or rather, the real journey had just begun. A new story, not of vengeance, but of growth, not about the past, but about the future, not driven by hate, but by purpose. Nora did not stop. She kept moving forward farther, higher. She was a true queen. Now, did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.